Guys, I am back with another Midwest Cannabis podcast. Today, I will be joined by Gupta. He is the CEO and founder of CannMenus. And CannMenus operates in the cannabis tech space, and they are based out of the Midwest, actually based where I currently am, which is Chicago, Illinois. Vib, how are you doing this afternoon, man?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I've actually been really I'm curious about the cannabis tech space, curious about how it's been expanding. So let's talk to the people a little bit first about how Can Menus got started and maybe some of your background in tech, even a little bit outside of the cannabis space.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I've always been a tech geek. Grew up as a '90s kid, kind of the golden age of the internet coming up. So was
Mhm.
really attracted to kind of computers. Yeah, for sure. Always messing around on the internet at an early age. So always kind of was attracted, like I said, to tech. Didn't consider it as a career really until college, and I'm not sure exactly why. Had a lot of influences that were kind of steering me towards healthcare. I think when I was younger, so I always really thought, maybe I'll go and try to do something within healthcare. By the time I got into college, I started thinking of other things I could do, and then started thinking more about my passion for technology, which was kind of becoming more prevalent in my life, just with things that were going on in the world with the development of smartphone apps and the rise of kind of smartphones. I was really, really attracted to the prospect of like creating technology, especially for smartphones, which was such a huge market opportunity, and really having kind of a an impact on an emerging kind of product category. So really just started kind of thinking about technology towards the end of college, started taking a couple of programming classes. And then by the time I graduated, really decided to try my hand and jump, both feet first into a tech career.
Okay. All right. And what space were you in before you kind of jumped into the cannabis space? What area of tech were you in?
Yeah, absolutely. So within tech, I kind of got my start in the quality assurance realm. So quality
Okay.
assurance kind of deals with, for people who aren't as familiar with different roles within tech, QA workers kind of focus on overall product quality. That usually involves things like testing the end product and then testing different pieces of the product as it's being built. Also, kind of writing code to do different validations on the product. Different engineers are making changes, you want to make sure you don't break anything that that's already working
Got
with
it.
your new code that you're deploying. So that's kind of how I got started. It is I think, a career path within tech that's well suited for people who have like a break mindset more than like a build
Okay.
it up mindset. Yeah, you really
Got
have to
it.
think about, what are the things that are going to cause this product to fail, and how can I break it and throw a wrench into it? So it's a really kind of interesting way of thinking about technology, thinking
Interesting.
about products, putting yourself, yeah, in kind of the user's shoes. And really, the kind of companies I worked for before we started CannMenus.com were in the big data technology space, which is kind of what we used to build Can Menus. Kind of used our experience within big data platform engineering and applied it to the cannabis industry.
Got you, got you. When you said, I guess I'll kind of have a double-ended question. When you say we can definitely let you shout out your team, so you can kind of say who you started Can Menus with, and then what also directed you into the cannabis space. What opportunity did you see that was like, yeah, I want to start be in this field still, but operate within the cannabis space?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely been someone who has had a strong interest for cannabis, really, really geeked out on cannabis from the first time I was introduced to the plant. It's kind of one of those eye-opening experiences for me when I was younger, where it was kind of like there's huge medicinal benefits for this plant. You see a ton of people using it with a lot more kind of impunity in terms of consequences than something like alcohol, yet it's so taboo. People don't talk about it. It's always hush hush, and it's very illegal, especially in Illinois. um, uh, when things started to get more and more legalized, when it started out kind of in Colorado and Washington, I kind of figured that things would stay out west for longer than they did. I didn't really think
Mm,
that things would start to change in the Midwest, in Illinois specifically. I think Michigan was very early on in the legalization wave as well. But in Illinois, I was really dismissive of it early on, just kind of thinking, oh, it's a really limited medical program. They're never going to let it go fully legal, or at least not, for a long time. Illinois is going to screw it up. Had really, very little confidence in the just
Yeah.
the politics of Illinois to make it work correctly. But eventually it just became kind of harder and harder to ignore, both on kind of the tech side and just the side of the industry. You look at the industry in Illinois, in 2018, things were really expanding in terms of medical license availability. Medical cards were very restricted early on, and then with the addition of PTSD as a qualifying condition, things really, really expanded. And I started to hear, more and more of people in my personal network, getting cannabis cards, and kind of seeing more and more dispensaries pop up around Illinois. At the same
Mhm.
time, you look inside these dispensaries and things were still being done, using pen and paper, and very, very long waiting room lines, even though it was a very limited pool of patients, right?
Mhm.
So I kind of just, taking a look at it, it was like, things are really, really early in the industry and in terms of technology within the industry. What's going to happen now, when things go fully legal? There's millions of people now shopping at these dispensaries. How are they going to handle the traffic without technology? And it's uh, taking a look at other retail industries that have embraced technology. We pretty much knew, me and my co-founders, that if the industry wasn't going to embrace technology, they weren't going to grow to speed that demand would dictate.
I hear you. I hear you. So this is the void, the problem, kind of that payment processing, ordering system. That is the need that Can Menus fills, correct?
Well, kind of. When we first started ideating, and I'll say a little bit more about, kind of me and my co-founders. We met at a
Okay.
company called Uptake Technologies, big data technology company out of Chicago. Really fast growing, big, well-known technology company at the time. We were solving problems for the retail space at Uptake as well. So it was kind of easy
Okay.
to draw parallels between, yeah, this is cannabis right now. Maybe it's a limited set of retailers, but as it continues to expand, they're going to need to use, some sort of bulletproof big data technology to really scale things out. So we
Yeah.
kind of, had a little bit of a seed planted where it was like, we know how these platforms work. Now let's take what we already know and apply it to cannabis, which is an industry where you see things, like I said, like 2 hour wait times, for medical cannabis patients. I think in a waiting room, early on, one of the kind of key moments, that led to us ideating around different pieces of technology that we could create for retail, was, witnessing somebody in a medical dispensary within Chicago, who had arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and he's sitting there, 1 to 2 hour wait for him to get his products, to even place his
Mhm.
order. And it was kind of like, it doesn't have to be like this.
Right.
When I was in high school and college, I worked in more traditional retail, at Best Buy and Sears, and everything was omni-channel. It was going through, a centralized system that would take online orders, in-store orders, through a centralized kind of fulfillment system, and it was all streamlined. So it was kind of, how can we take these concepts and apply it to the cannabis industry, and why haven't these things kind of been done for the industry already?
Mhm.
So I guess kind of circling back, when we first started ideating, it was more so kind of how can we, improve the experience for customers within retail, doing
Okay.
things like, digital payments, online ordering. When we started doing the research, we saw that there were some companies, newer companies, that were making good strides in that space. And then that's when we really started taking a look at, what kind of data are these companies producing, these 5 or 6 menu provider companies that are trying to use technology to streamline retail. What does their data look like? Because when I shop for cannabis online right now, it's really fragmented. I don't know
Mhm.
where, I'm going to find a product that I want. When I find the retailer that has the product that I want, I don't know where exactly I need to go to place an order online. Whether it's pickup, whether it's delivery in some markets, it's all really confusing. And that's kind of was the birth of our company when we realized that there was kind of this treasure trove of data on the internet related to cannabis, but it's all scattered. So let's kind of use our big data experience, gather all this data, and put it all into kind of a centralized space.
I mean, that it sounds like you're really feeling a need because I agree, even at this point, there are a lot of things that are going to keep evolving in the tech space because it's getting easier to order if you're going to a dispensary, but still, I can imagine in other places like you're talking where there's delivery, where there's other options or kind of more express options than we have here in Illinois. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of different issues that need to be solved in each different market because you guys exist in other spaces, other states other than Illinois as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We look at kind of the publicly available web of cannabis data within the United States right now. Definitely, want to look into expanding into Canada over the next few months as well. So that's going to
Okay.
be kind of a whole new frontier for us. But
Okay.
yeah, right now we're all over the United States.
Okay. And when let's talk kind of about moving into Canada, and that's an international move, of course. Um, what challenges come up when you're trying to navigate those type of things? Is it just about the laws that affect Canada, or are there other kind of issues that arise when you're doing something like that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, Canada is a different market from the United States in that it's national, right? So it's definitely a little bit different in terms of the legal structure. One of the reasons we kind of started doing things the way that we did with canned menus in Illinois was because we didn't have any sort of access or influence to be able to get a license to actually, open up our own retailer or open up our own brand. So, in terms of entering the industry, just kind of taking a look at publicly available cannabis data, it was something that we didn't really need anybody's permission to do. And
Right.
taking a look at Canada, it's kind of similar for us. It's like we've kind of taken a look at this whole wide set of cannabis data within the United States. We know now some of the things that make cannabis very nuanced and specific, and how to kind of handle those attributes within different kind of data models. Now let's kind of take just our platform and unleash kind of the world of cannabis data within Canada into our platform. So I think the
Yeah.
platform is developed as, yeah, in very kind of a generalized cannabis intelligence monitoring kind of way. And now,
Mhm.
to enter into Canada, definitely some things we need to look at in terms of legal structure and make sure that we're licensed and operating as a legal entity within Canada, following the rules of the web in Canada as they relate to what we're doing. But in terms of actual operations, it's not going to be as much of a leap in terms of developing the original platform in the US.
I see. And now, I mean, I'm sure you're in pretty much every single state that has legal cannabis here. Was it hard to break into each different state? Or is America, because I know America, in terms of how things are marketed, how things are put out like that, I know you just get to use like kind of like the public data a little bit more than actually like a sophisticated like marketing system to where you're trying to market to different customers and things like that. But are there separate challenges in the states here in the US, or is it kind of just all one issue that you're facing because it's not federally legal?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the types of data in different states are largely very similar. I think
Okay.
there's certain markets that do things really, really differently. So, for example, I believe Connecticut, you're not allowed to advertise things as openly in terms of strain names. They have, I don't know the exact specifics of the legislations, but essentially you can't have like a Jack Hare strain in Connecticut. It has to be kind of
Okay.
described in a different way, right? Outside
Okay.
of that, I think outside of that, the types of products are very similar. Brands are generally pretty different.
Hmm.
Strains, different kind of
Yeah.
marketing representations of these products
Right.
are largely, similar. So, in terms of breaking into different markets, we didn't take an approach of like, hey, let's take a look at California first, and then let's take a look at Washington. We basically just took a look at what are the largest providers of e-commerce menus on the internet. How can we kind of develop crawlers and scrapers that can understand, the widespread data that these huge kind of marketplaces have, and let's aggregate, the data from these marketplaces, no matter where they are, and kind of make sense of it through our own data models, right? And
Hmm.
after we did that, we were able to kind of see that this is 80% of all retailers in the country, on, the top four major platforms, and we can keep filling in, the rest of that 20% gap that we don't have with other, little platforms as they come online. We started doing this before COVID as well, where online ordering was really, really nascent. And
Hmm.
since then, in the past, 2, 3 years, especially, things have really, really accelerated to where there's some states that do, over 50% of their cannabis retail orders come in from online ordering, which, I think is a huge number,
Wow.
compared to what it
Right.
was before. Yeah.
And with the amount of data that you guys are getting on LinkedIn, on a lot of these platforms, you're constantly seeing a lot of talk about the cannabis culture. And from before legalization happened, there was kind of a little bit of an old cannabis culture and illegality, and certain states still have that culture cultivating. And then now we're pushing forward in a lot of states into more of like a legal kind of world that we're going to be in. How do you see the data and the culture kind of combining? Because if the data pushes it more, let's say, commercial versus the people feeling like they want to keep it kind of old school a little bit, how do you see that clash kind of happening? Or do you see that being an issue at all?
I think it's going to be an issue and an opportunity on the data side of things. I don't
Okay.
see things becoming standardized within cannabis anytime soon. I don't
Mhm.
see there being a winner in terms of one camp saying, "Oh, we need to stick to the old school culture, OG Kush, Jack Hare, all the classic strains." The strain name model of things, and then the new school that are kind of like, let's just describe things based on effect or different types of marketing. I think it's going to
Mhm.
be, just like what we see today, which is a whole mess of data, kind of all over the place. It's going to
Mhm.
be like that, in my opinion, but just amplified. I think there's going to be thousands of more brands that come up, that come
Mhm.
online, thousands of more products and SKUs. And it's really, it's unlike any other product category, which is what makes it so interesting on the big data side of things and just the technology side of things. Not a ton of other product categories have like 1,000 different SKUs of chocolates. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
there's
For
really
sure.
only yeah, there's really only a few candy bars out there that dominate the market. There aren't 100
Mhm.
of them. So it will be interesting to see what happens, but I don't see a clear winner. I think there's going to be kind of fragments of the industry that gravitate more towards the new school, the more buttoned up side of it, and then fragments that are more old school cannabis culture, which I think that's just fine. Something for everybody, right?
I completely agree. I completely agree. And if somebody is approaching graduating college, a recent college graduate, or even somebody who just graduated high school and they love programming, do you have any suggestions for how people could get into the cannabis space in the tech side? And as a programmer, do you have any avenues that you think people should take, maybe?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, that was another one of kind of the catalysts of me and my co-founders kind of deciding that it was a good opportunity to start our company. Was that there aren't enough people from technology companies looking to cannabis, or there really weren't a few years ago. There's an increasing amount of people now, I think, yeah, that view cannabis as a legitimate career opportunity, not something that's going to hurt their career prospects in the future, right? With kind of industry reputation that you develop and stoner reputation, things like that, which I think are starting to fade. But for anybody who's in the technology side of things or interested in the technology side of things as they relate to cannabis, there's huge opportunity right now, right? I think we've seen the numbers that some of the tech companies have raised in terms of capital over the past couple years. Tons of money being poured into developing new technology for cannabis, and there is a huge need for more people with technical skills to get into the industry. So, whether that's reaching out to startups like CannMenus.com or more established companies like Leafly and Weed Maps, there's plenty of opportunity to either start your own venture within the technology space in cannabis, or to get involved with applying your current technology skill sets to solve all sorts of problems that cannabis companies, both on the tech side and just vertically integrated operators and different cannabis brands are facing as well. So.
And I completely agree with you just from my perspective that there's so much opportunity because I know that Leafly and Weed Maps, like you mentioned, were like the first to market. But I think there's opportunities in there to improve on their product offering. I think there's a lot of opportunities, especially considering they're only strong in a few states. Some of their state presence isn't very strong. And so I just
Yeah.
kind of seconding what you're saying, and I think there's so much opportunity. I wish I could code and do those type of things. I feel like I could find a good amount of
Anybody can do
opportunity in
it.
the market.
Yeah, anybody can learn how to code. That's another thing that we're really passionate about. As
Mhm.
our company is just giving back to kind of the community in terms of tech education. We
Mhm.
love working with anybody who has an interest in learning more and kind of developing content for anybody who wants to get started within the tech industry. Because both me and my co-founders, we've all transitioned into technology kind of in our own untraditional paths, and really feel like anybody can do it if you have the interest.
I see, I see. And we already kind of talked about the transition into Canada potentially. Any other big news for your company? Anything else that's on the horizon that you would want to talk about?
We have our consumer facing website live and launched, canmenus.com, and we're really proud of how we can keep the data refreshed nearly in real time. So it's every hour is our data is refreshed. Anybody can go on that website, search for products. It's completely free. Definitely are going to continue improving the user search experience and being able to offer that product search experience to be able to embed that directly into a brand's website so that a brand can kind of direct people to their own branded product search experience for their own products, as opposed to a large marketplace. And then, of course, on the business side of our application, we're working with different brands and distributors and other types of companies within the industry, developing different types of BI reporting based on product performance metrics that we have, which are really, really cool. So, just doing what we can to provide companies with an accurate, real time, up to date kind of bird's eye view of this really, really dynamic, fast moving, crazy industry.
For sure. You sounds like you probably personally are extremely busy, and all of you guys are really busy within like creating all these things. And you're a cannabis consumer yourself, correct?
Yes, definitely, definitely.
And so, what would you say is your favorite way to consume?
I love flower. Cannabis flower has always kind of been, I think, my preferred method of consumption. It's hard to always be able to consume flower, right? It's very loud. You
Right.
have to be in the right environments, especially in Illinois where there's not a ton of consumption lounges. So these days it's a lot of vapes and edibles, and really just kind of depends on what kind of mood I'm in. I kind of like I said, huge cannabis enthusiast. I'll get down with almost any type of cannabis product. That's one of the things that I love most about cannabis is that, especially on the data side of it and CPG, there's so many different types of cannabis products. It's fascinating to see what they'll come up with next, right?
Right. It's almost like it's not even almost. You can statistically prove that there's so many types of consumers also. And so the
Mhm.
same way people have been trying to like pigeonhole a certain kind of prototype on somebody who consumes cannabis in all the different ways or whatever, like you said, with the stoner label or calling people lazy, stuff like that. We can literally see that there are people like you who are running companies, successful companies, and consuming, as well as tons of other people in our society. So that's really cool to see.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. One of my first experiences with legal cannabis was actually internationally. It was in Amsterdam.
Okay.
In 2005, I was just 17 years old, but got an opportunity to host a student from Holland for 2 weeks.
Mhm.
He came over from Holland and stayed with my family for 2 weeks. And then I went and stayed with his family for 2 weeks. And it was part of a school program that we had. Me and my friend wandered into a coffee shop, is what they
Mhm.
call them in
Right.
Holland. And it's just so different from how it is here, right? It's a really open cafe type experience. We were 17. We went into a smaller one. We didn't even get carded, so definitely a lot looser with the laws, especially back then. I think things have probably changed and become a little bit more strict since then, or I don't know, but it's just so different how I expected cannabis to be when it was legalized in the United States, based on what I saw in Amsterdam and what I'm actually
Mhm.
seeing, today. It's not open at all. It's very much behind closed doors. And coming from a more conservative, like, Indian background, where a lot of people, I think, in the Indian community are afraid to talk about cannabis. Well, what
Mhm.
if we had, open consumption like in Amsterdam? I think it would make things a little bit more accessible. I don't even remember where I was going with this. I kind of just started reminiscing on the
It's all
Amsterdam
good. I don't mind at
experience.
all.
Yeah, yeah, just back then too, thinking back to it, they had paper menus in Amsterdam. That was the first time I was exposed to, like, a cannabis menu, and it was kind of like, oh wow, this is really cool. It's a curated
Right.
experience. There's things to choose from. It's not just buying weed on the street corner, and whatever you get is what you get. So yeah, it's just been kind of interesting to see the evolution of things in the United States. And I guess I'll close by saying, like, I really hope things open up more in the United States in terms of um, just breaking down the stigma by making it more visible. Right? You can walk down the street in Las Vegas and drink a beer, but you can't legally smoke a joint, and it's confusing to
Right.
me.
It is. It's that clash of like new laws and the culture also needing to change at the exact same time. And it it is really strange to me, actually, even within the cannabis space, how stigmatized smoking is to a certain extent in certain types of areas and stuff. It is. I would stop and say it's extremely confusing to me as well that with a legal product, it's still so hard even to sell it. It's still so hard to advertise it, and the things that we see that are advertised, the things that we see on television, the things we see pop up on our computer screen, are way worse than a vape pen or edible or something like that that are so demonized all the time. It isn't. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally do. I support legalization in the U.S. and I should say I celebrate the progress that's been made, but it's still very still cringy to kind of see um, you know uh, limitations in the legalization, and just weird um, just laws that don't make sense and that we all just kind of are down with, because it's much better than the system before. Not as many
Yeah,
people
it's
are
just improving,
you
so
know
it's like it is what it is.
exactly. Yeah, exactly, yeah. So,
If people
hopefully in the
want to get
future, we
in
won't have to make
contact,
as many compromises.
hopefully so. Hopefully so. If people, in closing, if people want to get in contact with you, Viv, what would be the best way for them to do that? Or get in contact with the company even?
Definitely, yeah. You can always reach out to me by email, vib at thecan.co. I'm always, available by email, LinkedIn message as well. Please connect, follow on LinkedIn, and would be happy to connect that way as well.
Oh, that's great, man. Viv, I really appreciate what you're doing in the tech space. I mean, obviously, I appreciate you joining me for today's conversation, but I appreciate the fact that somebody is fighting the good fight in the tech space. I know it's not easy to exist in the cannabis market, but guys, as Viv said, in a way that the market is, or in the way that the market's controlled now, we have to find ways of getting into the market with the lowest barriers. And it seems like the tech space is a very good way to kind of get in the back door of the cannabis space. And so,
Absolutely, absolutely, definitely well said. Yeah,
Vib, I really appreciate you joining me for today's episode, and we'll definitely have to do it again. I definitely want to talk to you a little bit more about some of the tech opportunities as well. But I appreciate it, man.
absolutely, absolutely. Tech or data insights as well. Would love to dig into some of the data trends that we're seeing.
Perfect. Well, I'll
Yeah.
talk to you soon, man. And I appreciate all
Thanks so
you
much for
guys
having
for
me. Yeah.
joining us for this episode. Yes, sir.